Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1001. Thousand Ghosts Devourer Insect. The reason why he had done this was simple. Jun Mo Xie wanted to create a facade, making people think that the Jun family had provoked a terrifyingly ruthless opponent. And this person's methodology was also beyond everyone's imagination. Not only was he vicious and cruel, he was capable of making one wish they were dead. The ultimate goal of this was to make everyone cut off all suspicions of the things happening here being related to Mo Jun Ye with the free and natural physique. It may be cruel, but Jun Mo Xie felt no pity. Young Master Jun already felt like he was being very merciful to the Jun family by handling it this way. As Jun Mo Xie advanced rapidly towards the place the 9 Nethers soul refining was held, he did not realize that there was a secret chamber in the place he passed. And the 6 highest members of the Jun family were having a meeting in there. And this old fellow, Jun Hui, who has gone through samsara one for God knows how many times, had managed to detect Jun Mo Xie's aura with his own unique senses. Although it was very faint, but it was enough to highlight a problem. Jun Mo Xie was flying at full speed when a sudden wang sound rang from above his head. Within seconds, it rang through the entire underground. Instantly, everyone underground was on their guard. For many years, this underground world had never had any intruders. Today, there was really an enemy who barged in. This was the biggest secret concerning the Jun family. How could the Jun family members not be flustered? If this person really managed to escape, then the biggest secret of the Jun family would spread throughout the entire Misty Illusory Manor overnight. Then all the other families will be alert. Because there was no way to cover up this secret. Whatever the Jun family wished to do in the future would increase in its difficulty by multiple folds. They may lose everything and become enemies with the 7 other families. This was not completely impossible. One wrong move, and the entire game was over. So this was a shocking matter to the Jun family. Everyone brought this matter to their greatest attention. They absolutely must capture the intruder and kill him. Only then could their tensed-up nerves relax. Right before Jun Mo Xie, there was a flurry of motion and 5 men in black robes appeared rapidly, heading in all directions before gathering back here within seconds. Did anyone find anything? No. That sneaky bastard is extremely crafty. He did not even leave a single trace. The only thing we can be sure of is that he is still here in the underground world. So we are still lucky. It's good that he hasn't left yet. Continue the search. We must find him. He mustn't get away. Then with a whoosh, these 5 figures flew away in separate directions at a rapid speed. As expected, the foundations of the Jun family were truly thick. These 5 people all had the cultivation level of a saint. The strongest presence was only slightly weaker than a saint emperor. This was more than enough proof of what the Jun family was scheming was not a small matter. Jun Mo Xie thought silently, looking in the 5 ways these people headed in. 5 experts like this actually lived underground like this for such a long time. Then didn't that make whatever the Jun family was scheming even more appalling? Then, another series of urgent chimes rang out. All the people searching about in the underground world of the Jun family instantly retreated into their own respective secret chambers with no delay. The sounds of stone doors closing rang out consecutively. All the doors were shut in a hurry, only leaving an empty passage outside. What is going on? Jun Mo Xie was confused. Why did they completely relax like this after being so anxious just now? Why did they stop searching? What were they trying to do? Were they really going to give up? While Jun Mo Xie was still mulling over this bizarre situation, a soft buzzing sound could be heard from all the entrances along the passages. Countess of weird flying bugs came rushing in a black swarm. From the looks of it, there must be a few thousands of them. Don't tell me that they are using small bugs to find out my location. What effects can these little bugs have? Jun Mo Xie was still in the yin-yang escape state, so he was extremely at ease and unworried. He was just confused. It looked like these little flying bugs were one of the methods the Jun family has for searching. It's a pity that you've met this young master. You're destined to be disappointed. Jun Mo Xie scoffed internally and continued to search for the whereabouts of the two brothers of the Jun family as per his original plans. But he suddenly noticed that all those little flying bugs swarming in were indeed flying in his direction. And with extreme precision. Could it be that these little bugs are really about to detect my presence? Jun Mo Xie frowned, observing those little bugs that were flying closer and closer. The yin-yang escape had never failed till now. Was it going to be exposed by some little bugs? Young Master Jun was not wrong in his guess. These little bugs had no damage on their own. It was a peculiar type of insect that Jun Hui had obtained by chance in one of his reincarnations. This particular insect lived in places with dead bodies because they need the dense corpse air to survive and reproduce. And these bugs may not have significant attacking capabilities, but it had the bizarre ability of devouring the soul of the deceased. It was precisely because of this nature that they were extremely sensitive to the soul of the living. After Jun Hui had obtained these creatures, he began to rear them and named them Thousand Ghosts Devourer Insect, for they would be a good help in tracking people despite their lack of abilities to deal significant damage. Before today, it had been extremely effective in tracking or discovering enemies who were concealed and had never failed. Seeing how all the members of the Jun family had been deployed and they were still unable to find that intruder, they released these Thousand Ghosts Devourer Insect. The effects were immediate. The moment these Thousand Ghosts Devourer Insect were released, they discovered Jun Mo Xie's whereabouts. Jun Mo Xie may still be in a concealed state and others were unable to see him, but these insects did not have to see him to find him. Besides, although he was hidden within the void state, the waves of his soul still existed. Of course, this was because Jun Mo Xie had yet to truly master and utilize the true meaning of yin-yang escape in name and essence, where he truly vanished within the void. He was still in a semi-formless state, so it was understandable for him to be discovered by these small creatures that were highly sensitive to the soul. But Jun Mo Xie, who had yet to thoroughly understand the yin-yang escape art, was instantly shocked. He had never imagined something this bizarre could exist. Could it be that there was really no foolproof method? These insignificant-looking bugs were actually capable of seeing past his infallible yin-yang escape art? Young Master Jun instantly detected an extremely evil aura the moment these insects appeared. And a revolting stench of rotting corpses filled the air. This instantly made Jun Mo Xie associated these things with something. He couldn't help but feel a surge of strong hatred. Because when he was observing the Jun family's feng shui, that evil aura was extremely similar to what he was sensing right now. At this moment, at about 5 zhang away from Jun Mo Xie, a middle-aged man appeared, wearing a smile. The moment he appeared, he smiled amiably towards Jun Mo Xie, like a fat rich man. You have impressive skills to be able to come here. Why don't you just reveal yourself? Let us drink wine and chat a bit and become friends with each other instead. Ha ha ha. Jun Mo Xie did not respond. He was not the least bit dismayed that the yin-yang escape has been exposed. If he wished to escape, he could easily vanish into the earth, with no need to worry over safety. Since he still had plenty of trump cards in his hands, why would he be in a rush to leave? It was never the young Master Jun's personality to give up halfway. And it seems that only those bugs have discovered me. These people can only gauge my general location from the reaction of these insects. How much of an effect can it have? Jun Mo Xie laughed and spoke in an unusually hoarse voice. Little junior of the Zhan family, did you think that you would be able to catch this old man with merely these few insects? Then, you guys are a little too naive. Before his sentence had ended, a cold, chilly voice spoke from behind him. We are not interested in catching you. Because since you entered this place, you are doomed to never leave this place alive. Jun Mo Xie turned around to look. Through the swarm of insects, about 8 zhang away from himself, a person in black stood straight like a spear. This posture reminded Jun Mo Xie of a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. As if this person himself was an extremely sharp sword. This person emitted a chilly, cold-killing aura that surged out in waves. Jun Mo Xie discreetly released his powerful spiritual sense to scout. To his surprise, these 2 people were all top experts. And their strengths were way beyond the levels of Saint Emperor. Even with his current strength, he was no match for either one of them if he was facing them directly. And now, he was caught between 2. The situation was a little unfavorable. Jun Mo Xie continued to croak. This sentence sure is amusing. This old man has always viewed death as returning home. Since I have come into this world, I have never thought of going back alive. Babbling nonsense. Babbling such nonsense when your death is approaching. Then this old man shall let you die in a terrible way. Then, the man in black suddenly struck. With his attack, all the 1,000 ghosts Devourer insects suddenly parted aside, and 100 rays of sharp sword chi came piercing through. Jun Mo Xie scoffed coldly and dodged every one of them. Then, with a turn of his right hand, a ball of unusually red-hot flame shot off from it, engulfing the entire passageway. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1002. Terrifying hole of 10,000 corpses. The burning hot flame instantly engulfed the entire passageway. A wave of intense heat wave instantly filled the entire underground world of the Zhan family. Both the 2 people in front and behind were caught within it instantly. How despicable! To use fire. An unusually icy force instantly surged out with a whoosh. From one end of the passageway to another, wherever the chill touched, the flames were instantly extinguished. Even the walls on both sides had a thin layer of frost forming on it instantly. The burning hot flames instantly vanished. The 2 enemies revealed themselves again. They did not suffer a single scratch, but they both had a terrible look on their faces. There was no other reason. Along with this powerful fire, all the 1,000 ghosts Devourer insects in the passageway were all turned into ashes. Not a single one was left. An odd, charred smell filled the entire passage. This mysterious expert's aim in putting fire was not to use it against the 2 of them, and it was also not to distract their attention. It was to get rid of all these 1,000 ghosts Devourer insects so that he no longer had to worry about being exposed with his concealment techniques. With such an unexpected change, Jun Xie, who had hidden himself in the dark to observe the battle, was flabbergasted. Both his hands trembled slightly, a look of disbelief in his eyes. How could this be? Was about to come rushing out of his mouth. Others may not know, but how could Jun Xie not? If these 1,000 ghosts Devourer insects were really so easily burnt, then Jun Xie wouldn't have valued them this much. Jun Hui had tested it out many times. These 1,000 ghosts devourer insect were not afraid of being burnt. Even if they were left burning in the highest temperature of flames for 2 hours, they would still be able to fly out from the fire without a single scratch, completely unaffected. But this unexpected scene before his eyes caused Jun Hui, who always schemed and planned far ahead, to be completely unable to accept it. 3,000 ghosts devourer insects that he had painstakingly bred turned into ashes in this bizarre wave of fire. But if that flame was really bizarre, then how could it instantly be extinguished by the power of the ice-cold palm? Everything just screamed bizarre and incomprehensible. In fact, no one would have imagined it. Because in this passage, there was nothing illuminating it. Everything was dark. No one had noticed that in that moment the flames began to burn. There was also a line of black flames that were secretly burning, blending into the darkness of the passage. In fact, it was after that black flame had begun burning that the real big fire that engulfed the entire passage began to burn. Although the process was extremely similar, it made a difference. When the huge fire began to burn, those insects had already been turned into ashes by the black flame. When the huge fire started, the black flames had already retreated and vanished secretly after accomplishing its purpose. The huge fireball afterwards was merely a diversionary tactic. Otherwise, even with the power of that ice-cold palm, what effect could it have? Right now, the flames were all gone. The entire passage returned back into a state of darkness. Jun Ye Xiao and Jun Tu scoffed angrily. Both of them began to rain a series of attacks at where the mysterious expert seemed to be earlier. But to their surprise, all their xian qi was hitting against thin air. There was nothing that was absorbing the impacts of their attacks. Even if there was, it was the stone walls that their xian qi had accidentally hit. The enemy had already fled. The two of them were top experts. The enemy had already left, so there was no point in them continuing to exert their strength. They both stopped and exchanged looks, seeing the deep shock in each other's eyes. Who is this person? To be able to maintain and not reveal himself under the full strength attacks of two Saint Venerables. And to completely eradicate all 3,000 ghost devourer insects at his will and vanish without a trace. The two Saint Venerables had not even caught sight of the enemy's clothes during this entire process. And the enemy was able to achieve unimaginable, remarkable battle results before the two of them. If something like this was told to others as a fact, no one might be willing to believe it. It was too shocking to believe. What they did not imagine was that young Master Jun actually did not quit while he was ahead and truly leave. Young Master Jun had merely leaned his body into the stone wall and blended into it. He had originally planned to use the advantage of his concealed form and the sharpness of the blood of yellow flame alongside with the unique art of unlocking Heaven's fortune to mount a sneak attack. Hopefully, it would get rid of both of them, but even one would be good. But he instantly realized that although he was at the level of a third-level Saint Emperor and was above Chao Guofeng in his strength, the disparity between him and these two people was still too great. Plus, these people were on full alert. Even if he struck suddenly, it would not be able to have the same desired effect. And it may instead expose his own powers. So Jun Mo Xie forcefully suppressed the tempting thought of secretly attacking. While these two were overly suspicious and observing the surroundings, Jun Mo Xie used the power of earth and passed through the stone walls into the other side. When young Master Jun used the power of earth to blend into this rock, he instantly noticed that this rock was a lot thicker compared to the rest he had passed. The few from before were slightly more than a zhang in thickness, while this one is at least 10 zhang in thickness. He had already gone past a distance of more than 10 zhang, but he still had yet to reach the other side. This underground world that the Zhang family had created could be said to be massive. All the rocks underneath had practically been opened through. It didn't make sense to leave a single wall of over 10 zhang in thickness without making use of it. There must be some huge secret behind this stone wall. Making up his mind, Jun Mo Xie continued to plow his way in that direction. Since he had the yin-yang escape and the power of the 5 elements, which place in the world was he incapable of going? After passing approximately 8 zhang worth of rock, suddenly there was a light before him and an indescribable pungency hit him in the face. Jun Mo Xie felt a strong urge to vomit instantly. Young Master Jun focused his vision and he couldn't help but feel enraged. What met his eyes was an unusually wide space. To be more accurate, it was a deep pit. Inside this deep pit, there were countless and numerous corpses. Layers and layers piled over each other. Just from one glance alone, it could be determined that there were above 10,000 corpses in here. The corpses forming the few layers on the bottom were already rotten. Their white bones were protruding. And the few layers on top looked like corpses of people who died not long ago. Jun Mo Xie was in the stone wall right above this pit of 10,000 corpses. Thud! Thud! A few splashes of blood splayed across the air, and over 10 corpses were tossed in again. Then an extremely respectful voice spoke. Old ancestor, these are the 300 corpses for today. They have all been delivered. Do you still have any more orders? If it is not enough, this junior will immediately go and make arrangements. Good job this time. A chilly voice said satisfactorily. There is only one thing that you must not forget. Tomorrow, there must be at least 500 corpses. And they must be fresh. There must be no mistakes. Do not mess up the plans. Jun Mo Xie looked over in the direction of the voice. On a tall stone platform, there was an old man. He looked like a skeleton wrapped in bones and was holding onto a long object that had an odd shape. Before the old man was a cauldron that was completely black. Inside, there was a black mist that constantly drifted out of it. Below that cauldron, there were 9 other specific black tubes that led out and stretched all the way underneath the whole of 10,000s of corpses. Yes. But, old ancestor. That voice seemed to be a little afraid, as if he wished to speak something but was afraid to voice it out. After a great struggle, he mumbled, the people that we can kill near the family have already more or less been killed. If we continue to massacre in such batches, there may be someone who will get involved. In fact, the Miao family and the Zhang family are already looking into the whereabouts of these people who has gone missing. If this continues, I'm afraid that. What are you afraid of? As long as you leave no traces. So what if you kill even a few thousand people? These are just commoners who are like ants. Who will really care about them? If there is not enough people here, then you can go to Heart Fantasy City. The more the better. Yes. I was hoping to seek your permission. Proceeding at your desired pace is the priority. It's just that if we are going to gather people from Heart Fantasy City, the journey is a little far, and the number you require this time is too massive. I'm afraid we may require more helpers. If it's just us alone, I'm afraid we are not competent enough. If we end up delaying old ancestors' plans, and your considerations are understandable. Go find Shan Wu Yun. Let him make arrangements. Tell him specifically that my side is at its most crucial point now. There must be no breaks. If the life sacrificial offerings are halted, there is a danger of everything going down the drain. Yes, sir. Then this servant shall take his leave. A huge man with a fat face bowed politely and slowly backed out. Jun Mo Xie slowly floated from the stone wall. He looked at this bony old man on the stone platform. The killing intent in his heart was surging uncontrollably. Everything happening over here was obvious. The Jun family was trying to do some sort of scheme, and it required a countless number of corpses of living people as sacrifice. From there, they would gather the power of the death spirits and achieve their certain goal. This old man treated human life as grass. This sort of conduct could not be described by merely cruel and vicious. He was completely savage and inhuman. Jun Mo Xie, who was boiling with killing intent, was just about to strike when there was a flash of at the door. Someone entered. That person asked indifferently, "How is it? How is the progress today?" Jun Mo Xie did not expect to see this person. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1003. Strike. Sudden change. Because this person who came in later was a young man who looked like he was in his 30s. Donned in green robes. His face was deathly pale, and even his eyes were white in color. Jun Mo Xie initially thought that it must also be some other old fellow, to be able to talk to this bony old demon in such an authoritative tone. But to think that the person who came in was so young. It was indeed too unexpected. That bony old man had just stood up and barely had time to reply when that young man suddenly furrowed his brows and looked in the direction of the stone wall where Jun Mo Xie was, eyes full of suspicion. Could it be that he could detect me? Jun Mo Xie's heart jumped. He quietly shifted using the yin-yang escape and blended himself within the area that was abundant of the smell of corpse. That young man scanned about carefully, a look of suspicion on his face, but did not find anything unusual. He finally continued. The person who intruded today has Xian cultivation that is a profound mystery. And he has some sort of divine method of appearing and vanishing. Until now, we can no longer confirm if he is still here or had he already left. And either way, it is a disaster for us. If he has yet to leave, with all his mysterious concealing abilities, the Jun family can no longer speak of any secrets. And the most terrifying thing is that the person is gone. No matter who he is, the moment he leaves this place, he already knows the secrets of the Jun family. And it is enough to destroy the entire Jun family. So you absolutely must coagulate the most amount of corpse qi within the shortest period of time. Forcefully block out the feng shui position of the Miao family and make their remaining good fortune transfer over to the Jun family within 3 days. Only this way can the Jun family make it past this danger. Don't care about how the other families react. All those who want to completely restrain us will merely be deployment. So they will need at least 3 days. And this is the time for us. The bony old man jolted and said with great difficulty, I also understand the severity of the matter before us. But, if we really do that, I'm afraid, because it is done too hastily, there will be mistakes. Old ancestor, you are the professional in this. You should know that it is a taboo to rush things like this. We are already using methods that defy the heavens. If there is any error, it is not salvageable. The young man replied calmly. I understand things like this. But right now, the circumstances do not allow us to wait anymore. We can only speed things up. The secret of this place is bound to be exposed. If we do not complete things now, only annihilation awaits the entire Jun family, with no chance of turning things around. The Jun family may be strong, but when faced with the joint forces of the Manor Lord and the 6 other families, we stand no chance of victory. It is common for humans to be at a lack of better choices. The accident this time really left us helpless. The young man raised his head sinisterly and cursed. That goddamn intruder. Who is it exactly? No matter who he is. If the Jun family is unable to escape out of this, I will make this person and his entire family pay with their lives. Since things have already gotten to this point, then I shall immediately finish this matter with all my strength. The bony old man answered after a long struggle with himself. His expression was tragic, as if he would need to sacrifice himself to accomplish this matter. Don't worry. After this is over, I have a way to replenish and recover the lifespan that you've lost. It'll take a year at most for a complete recovery. And you'll even advance. The young man was Jun Xie. Right now, his tone was exceptionally stern. Many thanks to old ancestor. The bony old man was Jun Ye. He secretly relaxed upon hearing this reply. What he was going to do was completely against the will of the heavens. Although it was the art of feng shui, it would require using his own life force as the trigger. If not for this, why would he be so skinny to such a shocking state? After Jun Xie finished talking, he did not stay any longer, instantly exiting this giant stone chamber. Seeing Jun Xie depart, Jun Ye remained standing still, not moving for a long time, as if he were mulling. Finally, he let out a long sigh and sat back cross-legged. Deeply sucking in a breath of air, he raised his palms and suddenly, the top of the stone chamber radiated bright light. Following it, above the corpses in the giant pit before Jun Ye, were whooshing sounds. Outside the door, Jun Xie, who was standing silently, laughed satisfactorily upon hearing this. Then, he left for real. Jun Mo Xie raised his head and looked up. On the ceiling of this stone chamber, there was a complete, intricate carving picture of the Misty Illusory Manor's 9 peaks. On that picture, the connection between the peaks were like the meridians of the human body. There was a vague flow of light between them. The corpse chi in the pit continued to whoosh about, slowly gathering in midair and forming into a ball of black purplish, extremely evil chi flow and landing into that cauldron before Jun Ye. Under it, the 9 tubes begin to move vigorously. Following which, a thin, black-purple ray of light rose from the cauldron and hit on the location of the feng shui position of the Miao family in the picture in the ceiling. Instantly, the color representing the Miao family turned dull. After a breath, Jun Ye yelled with all of his strength, "Go!" A gray gust of air rose upwards with a whoosh in the direction of the top left corner of the stone chamber. And the stone wall in that position became hazy. As to that gray air that had already flown away from that place and vanished. Where it vanished into was exactly where the Miao family's feng shui position was at. Jun Mo Xie could even confirm that gust of air had landed in a crucial location that connected the Miao family with the main peak. After doing all this, Jun Ye's face instantly turned red. He huffed and puffed with all his strength, catching his breath from the air in this stone room, as if he didn't mind the sickeningly overwhelming odor of corpses it was infested with. After a long while, Jun Ye's face turned deathly pale. The skin on his face also seemed to have loosened. His eyes were glazed over. He sat there silently, an unusually pure surge of Xian qi circulating within his meridians. As if he were trying to recover his strength within this short period of time. And the cauldron before him did not stop. The tubes were still quaking, churning the corpses and skeletons below. Then afterwards, there was another gust of corpse chi that slowly gathered. Then, a gust of red mist began to rush from the right upper corner of the stone room, just like before. vanishing after a spin. Jun Mo Xie, who had a few certificates in the art of feng shui, also finally understood the theory within this. The Zhan family used countless human lives by massacring them to accumulate and form a corpse miasma using all the intense resentment. Then, using a formation that was the same as the Misty Illusory Manor's 9 peaks to forcefully hinder the fortune of the Misty Illusory Manor. And at the same time, block all of their paths. Then, it was forcefully channeled into the Zhan family. Just looking at this pit full of skeletons, it can be imagined that there were 10,000 people who died for no reason here. Every day, there were just 300 corpses. At most, 500. At the start, the number will definitely be fewer. Then, how long had the Zhan family been operating this scheme for? No matter what, Jun Mo Xie detested this sort of cruel behavior bitterly. I was also, once a grass. We may not have great capabilities, but we will never be able to see the actions of the higher-ups. But we are also never willing to accept that our fate is the sacrificial item for these big shots to snatch for power. Jun Mo Xie's hand was already linked with the Hongjun pagoda and holding onto the blood of yellow flame tightly. In his heart, the killing intent was slowly gathering and gradually reaching a peak. Jun Ye took a short rest and recovered a bit of his strength. Knowing that the matter must no longer be delayed and he could relax, he instantly got ready for the next bout of sacrificial rites. Looking at the ball of black-purplish chi flow that was forming, a rare smile appeared on Jun Ye's bony face. As hideous as it looks, it was still a smile. With a point of his finger, the black-purple ball of chi landed in the cauldron, and after a round of tossing, a thin ray of black-purple light shot up. This was the moment Jun Ye was the weakest. And at the same time, his mind was the most relaxed. Because everything else would run its course according to the formation and he didn't have to do a single thing. But right now, it was even difficult for him to catch his breath. Although he was a saint venerable, his weakness right now was obvious. Even the strongest person would have to pay a hefty price for altering fate and defying the will of the heavens to steal others' fortune. And Jun Mo Xie had chosen to strike at this moment. He only took a stride in the void, but he had already covered a distance of almost 20 zhang. Instantly, he arrived right before Jun Ye. A speed like this was already beyond the abilities and limits of any human. Following which, a burst of sword chi shot out. As if the entire space was going to crumble in this moment. A dazzling radiance that burned with intense heat shot into Jun Ye's eyes. A sudden change like this caused this saint venerable expert to instantly be blinded and caught unprepared. Jun Ye had no defense at all. This was the most core location of the Zhan family, and also the place with the strictest protection. In the entire Misty Illusory Manor, aside from the spiritual herbal gardens, the most unlikely place to have any accidents was in here. In here, he had never been subjected to having to think about being attacked by an enemy. Even though he had heard that there had been an accident in this place, there was an unknown strong enemy who had intruded into the underground world. Jun Ye was sure that this was the absolute secret place that no one could barge into. Because he had set up countless restrictions beforehand around this place. Without his permission, even Zhan Luanhui was not allowed to enter as he wished. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1004. Kill you till your soul is completely annihilated. Jun Ye had always been confident in his own abilities. He always believed that the place where he was at was definitely the safest place. Since I was born, there has never been any enemy who managed to successfully scheme against me. Because he was the son of heaven's secrets. But right now, this moment, this absolute mishap had really appeared. And the price for this mishap was going to be Jun Xie's own life. The sword light came cutting down with an intensity of crushing everything in its way. Jun Xie only had time to think. The thing that I'm looking at, that is the tip of a sword. But, how could there be such a dazzling sword in the world? Before he could think of anything else, that sword had already stabbed deeply through Jun Xie's heart. Jun Xie screamed and howled in agony. His voice may be hoarse, but the volume was shocking. Right now, he was as good as blind, but he knew that he had already sustained a heavy injury that was enough to be fatal. And due to the overuse of his strength prior to this, there was no more qi for him to use to defend against the enemy. But Jun Xie was still a saint venerable. The sword had suddenly stabbed into his heart, and the killing intent on the sword exploded within his body, completely shattering his heart and dantian. And the forceful qi had smashed and churned his internal organs into powder in an instant. But this sort of injury was not enough to be fatal to a saint venerable. In other words, Jun Xie still had a hope of surviving. As long as he managed to get an opportunity, there was a chance. For the sake of getting a last chance at survival, Jun Xie, who was facing adversity, took a gamble. With a flip of his body palms, two short swords radiating dazzling light appeared from them. At the same time they appeared, they shot out like venomous dragons shooting out of the water. A chilly radiance went flying forward at high speed along with the blades. This was the last attempt at striking that Jun Xie was trying as a saint venerable. Even if people on Chao Guofeng's level faced this straight on, they'd die instantly. And they would have their souls completely annihilated. In fact, Jun Xie never thought of trying to kill his enemy before him. He did not dare to have such delusions. That sort of thinking was too luxurious. It was not practical. Since the other party is capable of mounting a sneak attack like this on me so successfully, then his strength is definitely not weak. At the very least, he must be on the same level as myself. And even, most likely, much stronger than me. Otherwise, there is no way he could have achieved all this without me noticing. Jun Xie's wish was simple. It was very small. He really hoped that the opponent would duck. Yes. They just need to duck. Even if they do not pull their sword out of my body, just long as they loosen their hands from that sword, I'll be able to use that short time to channel all my cultivation into a holy infant and escape from this body. As long as I am able to successfully turn into an infant, then I can instantly escape from this stone room. After that, I'll just pick a body from one of the members of the Jun family and all will be good. I only have to practice for 100 years worth of cultivation and I'll be able to return back to the level I am at today. To a saint venerable, a body was just an external layer to contain the soul. There was no big deal changing from one to another. Perhaps this wish was too small, the opponent had really duck. Jun Xie may not be able to see, but with the senses of a saint venerable, he could distinctly feel the opponent loosening his grip on the sword and ducking to the side. Jun Xie was elated. He instantly activated his art and plopped to the ground heavily. A long sword remained stabbed in his battered and torn body. But this sword was no longer a threat to him, because he had already successfully coagulated a holy infant. Even if this sword chopped his entire body into minced pie, as long as the holy infant was able to escape, then Jun Xie would remain as Jun Xie. The reason why he was so confident was because the speed of a holy infant was incomparable in the world. But Jun Xie quickly fell into despair. The speed of a holy infant may be incomparable, but it didn't mean it was invincible and could not be hurt. When Jun Xie had successfully coagulated the holy infant, he was overjoyed. He instantly fled from his shredded body. But he instantly realized that he was not moving as quickly as he expected. After carefully looking down, he realized that on the body of his tiny holy infant form, the long dazzling sword was still there. And this sword was emitting spiritualistic human emotions of mockery. Yes, he was not wrong. This sword was mocking him. Jun Xie's mind instantly went into a state of chaos. Isn't the holy infant state formless and traceless? Isn't it completely impossible to be discovered? Then why is there a real sword stuck here? Jun Xie was racking his brains anxiously. Then he noticed another terrifyingly despairing matter. The sword that was stuck on his holy infant form was releasing a horrifying sucking force. Like a whale drinking in water, it quickly devoured all of the power in his soul from his years of cultivation. In the next instant, he noticed a young man in black standing silently in the void not far away. Both his hands were empty. But he wore a cruel grin, silently watching him. No! I don't want to die. I beg you. Spare me. I am the legend of mysteries, the son of heaven's secrets. I am willing to be your slave. I am willing to do anything for you. Spare me, ah. Jun Xie was hysterical, his little holy infant form begging and flailing about. His face was full of fear and tears. But that youth in black was unmoved. He still stood there, aloof and unaffected. His gaze was focused on that long sword. And this sword never ceased in sucking and absorbing all the energy from his body. No! Jun Xie cried hysterically, his tiny little form finally fading from existence, completely devoured by that sword. It all became the purest energy for the blood of yellow flame. Jun Xie, for his entire life, had been battling against the secrets of heaven and fate. Even when he was losing his life, he was still trying to defy the wills of the heavens and alter his fate. But there was no one else above the secrets of heaven, so how could it be battled by a mere human? The secrets of the heavens were a profound mystery. How could it be altered by humans? So Jun Xie ultimately died in the secret of the heavens that he had altered with his own hand. And the secrets of the heavens still remained the secrets of the heavens. The blood of yellow flame let out a satisfied cry. The nourishment this time had allowed it to gain plenty. All the strength of a saint venerable, how could it be small? You must have had your fill this time. Jun Mo Xie smiled, but grumbled. This time, really, all the advantages went to you, and I didn't get a single thing. The blood of yellow flame let out a long, crisp cry, thankfully, circling him slowly. Then, Jun Mo Xie pointed and the blood of yellow flame went flying. With a loud explosion, the cauldron on the platform burst open and all the black purplish pungent objects within splattered everywhere. After that, the blood of yellow flame continued to fly without stopping, to the ceiling. With a couple of strikes, that picture on the ceiling was instantly punctured with holes and came falling down. Right now, the sound of robes fluttering in a rush could be heard coming from the outside. Jun Mo Xie rolled his eyes and pressed his right hand, which was glowing yellow, downwards. Hong! The entire ground turned about and all the soil beneath it surged up and buried all the corpses. Let's bury them first. After doing all this, Jun Mo Xie returned back to concealing himself. Then, he commanded the blood of yellow flame to make a cut in the top left corner of the stone chamber. A peculiar gust of air came surging out and vanishing repeatedly. Another cut to the right top corner. This time, it was countless of red mist-like air that came out, vanishing without a trace. The Jun family's giant conspiracy had gone on for God knows how many years and generations, with countless people sacrificed for its accomplishment. It was completely destroyed and ruined by these few acts, tyrannical vandalism by young Master Jun. Even the Jun family's fortune was significantly damaged. Heaven watched as man went about his deed. It was fine if the heavens made one commit a sin. However, one mustn't commit a sin on their own initiative. If the Jun family knew that the root of the matter today was because Jun Qingfeng and Jun Yushu had offended Jun Mo Xie, causing this calamity to befall them, they'd definitely be very regretful. Why did they plot their designs on that free and natural physique owner? There was no hope of recovery even if they redid the formation in this space. Even if they tried to make arrangements, they'd have to start from scratch. Jun Mo Xie kept the blood of yellow flame, activated the yin-yang escape, and hid himself within the stone walls. The sounds of footsteps rang out. The first one to rush in was Jun Hui. He had just returned back to his room. Hearing all the reports that were coming in, he was fuming with rage. We still can't find any trace of the intruder. We didn't find anything on the left. Nothing found on the right. It seems that the person has already secretly left. Hearing all these reports, Jun Hui's expression became darker and darker. Since when was the Jun family this incapable? Even when there is an intruder in our most secret place, when we've deployed everyone, we can't find a single trace of the person. Could it be that the person had really left? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1005. Vanished Hope. Or perhaps that person is really impressive. Since my 1,000 ghosts devourer insects were all destroyed within a single meeting. This was a huge humiliation for Jun Hui that was impossible to wash away. He sat in his room with a dark expression, silently sending out his spiritual sense to search all about, but he couldn't find anything. When the trio, Jun Tu, Jun Ye Xiao, and Jun Xiao Xiao returned and said they made no discoveries, Jun Hui finally let out a long sigh and did not say anything else. Although he did not say, this sort of unusual silence made everyone feel uneasy. The three great saint venerables didn't even dare to breathe too loudly, standing in front of him. Although he only had the strength of a 4th-level saint and these three people were easily stronger than him by more than 10 folds, these three people did not dare be disrespectful at all. Because this person in front of them was the real founding ancestor of the Jun family. If not for him, there would be no one surnamed Jun in this entire Misty Illusory Manor. Besides, his current strength was the result of his intentional suppression. Building his foundations up, slowly and steadily, in preparation for surpassing the peak in legends. Otherwise, his current strength would have surpassed everyone present. How could the reincarnation of a holy infant only have this sort of prowess? While Jun Hui was mulling in frustration and the trio was feeling extremely uneasy, they felt a wave of trembling from far away. At the same time, a loud cry rang out. Jun Xiao Xiao was shocked. That place is where Jun Tianji is. He had barely finished this sentence when the other three had already dashed out. Jun Xiao Xiao immediately caught up with them. All four of them arrived in a cave filled with countless corpses and were left dumbstruck by the sight before them. Having the strength of a saint venerable level was completely useless at this moment. The place was in a state of utter devastation. The cave no longer looked like how it was. Jun Hui's greatest concern was the transition of fortune, so he was the first to raise his head and look upwards. Jun Xie almost spat a mouthful of blood from what met his eyes. The stone wall above them was completely empty. There was a huge hole in the top left corner of the stone chamber. The same on the right. On the platform, the cauldron was completely shattered. And Jun Tianji's battered and torn corpse was right before it. Jun Xie's body swayed as he took in the sight with a lifeless look in his eyes. He suddenly felt every hope turn into dust. Generations and generations had proceeded with these arrangements for thousands of years. It was a grand scheme that they had been preparing for several lifetimes. At the moment they were very close to success. It was completely destroyed by someone. And in such a thorough manner, leaving no room for salvation. This underground world that was built over thousands of years ago. Today, the underground world was complete. But this place, the most core contents, where the most important thing lay, was all destroyed and ruined. Then what meaning was there in all the hard work for the past thousands of years? For thousands of years. How many outstanding descendants of the Jun family were born in this place, grew up in this place, and put their entire life in this place? They even grew old in this place. They had never seen sunlight even on their deathbeds. Thousands of years of burying their conscience, constantly massacring innocent, defenseless commoners. Right when they were about to succeed, at the most crucial point, where they were the closest to the moment of success. All these everything turned into bubbles. Ancestor. Seeing the poor look on Jun Xie's face, Jun Ye called out worriedly. Jun Xie's face suddenly turned completely red, and his entire body shook violently. A mouthful of fresh blood spat from his mouth. There was no anger, no rage in his expression. It was frozen in an unusually calm state. Jun Xie returned back to normal after spitting out that mouthful of blood. He slowly walked over to Jun Tianji's corpse and put his palms together. Then, he made an odd gesture and a ball of milky white light formed on his hands and landed on Jun Tianji's corpse. But after a long time, there was no reaction. Jun Tianji finally stopped his actions. He said in an eerily calm voice, "Such vicious and ruthless methods. Not only did he destroy the physical body, he even destroyed Tianji's spirit seed. Even the holy infant did not manage to escape. He completely annihilated his soul. This time, Tianji is really beyond redemption." What? The trio who were looking at Jun Xie's actions hopefully instantly cried out in shock. The intruder is really ruthless. And his strength is no longer something you guys can deal with. Jun Xie stood up slowly, his black hair rising. "Find me a secret chamber. The three of you shall aid me in mediation. I want to recover back to my strength when I was at my peak in the shortest time. What the Jun family needs right now is an invincible fighter. And not someone who is hoping to break past legends. Deploy all members of the Jun family. You absolutely must find out who the one who did this is. The moment you find out who it is, kill him at all costs. Make sure his entire family is annihilated. If needed, I will take actions personally." A highly suppressed killing intent could be heard in Jun Xie's tone as he spoke. "Destroying the great scheme of my Jun family that has gone on for thousands of years. Death is not enough to compensate for this act," Jun Xie said slowly, carefully enunciating every single word. As he spoke, a ray of green light shot out from his eyes as he stared into the empty space before him. "Old ancestor, rest assured. This vengeance. The Jun family will definitely get revenge for this." The killing intent in Jun Ye and Jun Tu's eyes gleamed as they spoke. Even if we stake every single person in the whole Jun family, we must get this revenge. We will remember this vengeance for eternity and generations. Deep into our soul. No matter who that person is. The moment we find out who he is, his entire family, old and young, and all his friends and relatives will die. Not a single one of them shall be left. Jun Hui did not respond. He looked at the devastation in this place solemnly. Find someone to seal this entire place immediately. Especially this space. It must be completely sealed. There must be no traces left. Then, Jun Hui turned and left, with not even the slightest reluctance. But from his footsteps that were increasing in speed, it could be seen that Jun Hui was not feeling as calm as he portrayed himself to be. When he was at the door, Jun Hui paused for a while. Then he heaved a long sigh and exited slowly. A small teardrop landed cleanly the ground he had passed, slowly seeping through. There was a single sentence that he did not say out loud. The hope of 10,000 years all ruined in a moment. If I had known it was going to be like this, why did I insist to return back here? Looking at the disappearing back views of Jun Hui, the rest only felt as if a mountain was weighing on their hearts. There was a flurry of footsteps and Patriarch Jun Ye came rushing in as if he were possessed. Seeing the devastating state of the stone chamber, he suddenly jerked as his entire face turned pale. His mouth widened and closed, but no words could come out. Then, he suddenly spat a mouthful of blood and collapsed onto the ground. Such a huge shock was too much for Jun Ye to bear. He fainted on the spot. In his unconscious state, tears streamed from his eyes. All the hopes, all the preparation, all the hard work was gone. How could he bear this? As the patriarch of the Jun family, this was his biggest and greatest dream. Let's get moving. Zhang Yizhao's smiley look had also gone, and a look of grief had replaced it. The other two nodded their heads solemnly and they picked up Jun Yen's body and exited. What they did not know was that the oath that they had made in a fit of anger really came true in the future. Even if we stake every single person in the whole Jun family, we must get this revenge. How shocking and mighty this oath sounded. But they would have never imagined that the first half of the sentence would come true. And the second half of the sentence was not accomplished. As you wished. I will make sure the entire Jun family is staked in this. But as to whether you will be able to get this revenge, you shouldn't bear too much hope in it, since it is not very realistic. Jun Mo Xie, who was concealed within the void, scoffed coldly as he watched all the major heads of the Jun family disappearing outside that stone door. With a slam, the entire stone chamber was shut from the outside and the entire space turned into complete darkness. A moment later, numerous stones came raining into the space. Outside, more than 100 experts of the Jun family were moving large amounts of rocks and soil, pouring it all in. Large amount of stones were falling consecutively. This unusually spacious place was vanishing quickly. It did not take long for this stone chamber full of evil truth to be completely filled up and sealed. No one else would be able to find evidence of it anymore. When this stone chamber was about 90% filled, young Master Jun had already made a move from this place. Jun Mo Xie had not intended to take any evidence from this place. From the way he saw it, there was no need for any evidence for the annihilation of the Jun family. Just kill whatever and whoever I want. What evidence do I need? Evidence was merely something that people who wanted to show to the public to prove that they were fair and just. To Jun Mo Xie, that was something completely meaningless. I don't care whether people believe me. As long as I can do it, that is all that matters. Compared to the Jun family, who were looking for the culprit in a crazed state, young Master Jun was calmly exploring the entire underground world of the Jun family. First, because his main objective of this trip had yet to be completed. Secondly, please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1006. Place of the Nine Nethers Refining Soul. Thoroughly destroying this evil place of the Jun family. Stopping the Jun family's despicable act of converting the feng shui was definitely a good thing for the Misty Illusory Manor. If the Misty Illusory Manor wasn't in distress, the Miao family could also rest assured. What Jun Mo Xie had done today was the equivalent of giving them a new lease on life. But young Master Jun still did not feel great satisfaction. Because this, to him, was only a bonus and merely a bonus. It was just pure coincidence. Young Master Jun's real objective had yet to be achieved yet. After consecutively interrogating numerous people, Jun Mo Xie finally stood in another place of absolute secrecy. The sight before him was gloomy and sinister, full of an eerie and dark atmosphere. The demon-like wails in this place made one's blood run cold. Young Master Jun's eyesight was not hindered by the darkness. He had already noticed that on the stone wall before him, 7 words were carved into them, Path of the Nine Nethers Refining Soul. There were no signs of life. Even those 7 words were a deathly gray shade, full of gloominess. Looks like this is where the Jun family specially prepared for training the souls and minds of their young members through the Nine Nethers Refining Soul. Jun Mo Xie entered without any hesitation. The facilities that filled his eyes were full of a sinister and terrifying atmosphere. Jun Mo Xie remained unruffled. He could tell with one look what these facilities were used for. For example, those ghastly eyes and the sharp shrills may make one feel frightened, but they were actually the effects from using the principles of light reflection. And a narrow hole in the stone wall allowed the wind to gush in through, coupled with a few dozens of wind whistles that could produce a sharp and shrill noises. But the phosphorescent white skeletons in this place were not man-made, but the real remains of the dead. Here, and the entire way in, were filled with booby traps. And every single one got increasingly difficult to bypass. And increasingly sinister. If one was careless and triggered any single one, the attacks that followed after were enough to make one trigger all the other booby traps at the same time. Flying daggers, stones, toxic gas, pits, and iron hooks accompanied one through the entire way at all times. Every single stage was enough to put one in a dreadful situation with a very small chance of survival. Ruthless and leaving no mercy. Only after clearing one stage, on the way to the next one, could one catch the opportunity to recuperate a little. But even if he had the time to rest, he must not stay in a single place for more than an hour. The moment the time limit was passed, the passageway would turn even more treacherous. The member of the Jun family that set up this Path of the Nine Nethers Refining Soul is a talent, but also a vicious and ruthless man. These facilities had no effects on young Master Jun. This was not entirely thanks to the yin-yang escape. The mental torture and training he had undergone in his previous life already allowed him to take everything as a piece of cake without a single care. But not everyone had methods and experience like Jun Mo Xie. If it were an ordinary human who entered this place, even if he didn't die with 10 lives and had a single chance, he would have already been frightened to death by the sinister and eerie atmosphere of this place. Jun Mo Xie swiftly cleared 3 stages consecutively. Then, he could vaguely hear a conversation coming from in front. Looks like these 2 brothers of the Jun family are quite persevering, to have already gone so far in. Jun Mo Xie clicked his tongue and continued forward. Big brother. This place is too scary. How do we do this? In the darkness, Jun Xie trembled, hugging himself. His eyes were filled with terror. This Casanova young master was already shabbily dressed with disheveled hair. His face was green, and he looked even more frightening than a ghost. Get your head together. This place may be sinister and scary, but it is essentially a form of test. The real difficult test are those booby traps. Don't think about anything else and you won't fear it. Zhan Qingfeng's voice rang out. He may be preaching, but it was obvious from his tone that he was merely trying to put on a front. His voice was also trembling. Since they had entered this place, the two brothers had joined their hearts and worked as one, making their way through to the 5th stage. Although they had only been working on it for slightly over a day, in this short time, the two people had already been on the brink of breaking down several times. If not for the fact that the two brothers were able to support and encourage each other, they'd already have broken down a long time ago. This was naturally thanks to the Zhan family's value and regard of these two outstanding descendants. They did not let them come in alone, but with each other's company. If they were to go through this path alone, either one of these two brothers of the Zhan family who had lived like a prince would already have gone mad. This matter is still all because of that Mo Jun Ye. If I'm able to get past this and return to see the daylight, I definitely will not let him off. Jun Xie sounded like he was uttering this through gritted teeth. Clearly, his hatred towards Jun Mo Xie was enough to instantly suppress all the immense fear and terror caused by the horror of this path of 9 Nethers refining soul. Xie, I have been thinking over this. The matter this time is indeed extremely odd. Zhan Qingfeng's hatred towards the free and natural physique was evoked by him, but he spoke with deep considerations. Perhaps when the matter happened back then, only the feelings of failure and humiliation filled my heart, so I did not think any deeper. But now, thinking back of every single thing and incident repeatedly, I've discovered something amiss. Right now, they had just cleared the 5th stage and were currently resting. The moment they deigned to speak, their voices were filled with exhaustion that was impossible to conceal. But now, they clearly had more strength, and even their voices were more steady. Odd? Amiss? Big brother, what is it that was amiss? Zhan Xie grinded his teeth. Still the same old sentence. As long as I make it out, I will make Mo Jun Ye that bastard die a terrible death. And that bitch, meow xiao meow. Make her my personal slave. Make that slut wish she was dead. I will treat her with the most humiliating, most cruel methods. Let her know that I, Zhan Xie, am not someone this bitch can afford to offend. To turn so chummy with that goddamn Mo Jun Ye in a single day. If I had known that that bitch was so slutty, then I'd have pinned her under me a long time ago. To think that she wears a veil and act like a holy virgin maiden every day. Turns out she's just a cheap and complete whore. From Zhan Xie's tone, it was obvious that his anger towards Miao Xiao Miao surpassed that of Mo Jun Ye. This was really unexpected and unreasonable. In the dark, Zhan Qingfeng seemed to furrow his brows. He said in a displeased tone, Xie, your way of thinking is a little too extreme. Miao Xiao Miao didn't do anything too wrong. Of course, I know of your day and night yearning towards her, but she also did not do anything wrong. You pinning blame on her is a little. She didn't do anything wrong. She likes Mo Jun Ye. That is already the biggest mistake. Zhan Xie yelled in a crazed manner, the green veins on his neck popping out. In this place of complete darkness, Jun Xie finally unleashed the evil and desires that he had always suppressed in his heart. She should have been mine. And can only be mine. This entire life. She can only be on my bed. For me to wantonly use. It is an unforgivable crime for any other man to touch her. No exceptions. Shut your trap. Shut up. Zhan Qingfeng hollered. In the darkness, there was a moment of silence. Then Zhan Yuxu's mocking laughter began to ring out. Big brother, you finally couldn't endure it anymore? You are finally losing it, hearing how I blaspheme your goddess. Ha ha ha. He laughed maniacally. You always had your sights on Miao Xiao Miao. Did you think that I really didn't know? Indeed. You did a great job at hiding it. But every time you see Miao Xiao Miao on the surface, you appear like an honest man. The moment she turns away, the look in your eyes. As if you want to rip every single piece of clothing off her body. Big brother, you have been working so hard to endure it and pretend. Are you tired? Is it tiring? And the most tiring thing for you is, you are afraid that I will know. Afraid that someone knows of your desire for Miao Xiao Miao. But do you know? Actually everyone knows. Haha, how ridiculous. Right now. Us two brothers are in the same boat. And you are still thinking of concealing it? You're really too weak. Zhan Yuxu mocked the big brother he had always respected. In an almost crazed state. These two brothers are really beyond salvation. Jun Mo Xie shook his head in the dark. They were already in this state. Yet these two brothers were still trying to rival each other, and the object of their rivalry was a woman that had already fallen for someone else. Jun Mo Xie couldn't help but feel impressed. As expected, the lust of men is truly powerful. Farting your mother's bullshit. So what if I like her? So what if I wish to own her? Is this wrong? She is my goddess. If you dare to insult her anymore, I'll kill you. Zhan Qingfeng's voice was also agitated. Finally speaking the truth now. It is your freedom to like whoever you want. But you shouldn't pretend to be creating opportunities for me on the surface and pretending that you don't care, but... Zhan Yuxu panted and exploded. You son of a bitch shouldn't have pretended to help me create opportunities when in the end it is for yourself. You pretend to be wholeheartedly trying to help me on the surface. But secretly, you were merely using me as a stepping stone. Did you take me as a fool? Do you really think that I didn't know? Saying that I've blasphemed her. Is it really me who has blasphemed your goddess? I say it's you yourself. These two brothers are truly a pair of blood-related brothers. They both come from the same mother. But right now, they are cursing at each other with, son of a bitch, and they really weren't holding back on the swearing. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1007. Mo Jun Ye. Jun Mo Xie. Stop talking. Zhan Qingfeng shouted. Then the entire passageway turned silent. Only the sounds of panting could be heard. After a long while, Zhan Qingfeng slowly said, if we manage to get out this time, if the family's schemes succeed and the Miao family is ultimately crushed, I will compete with you fairly. Compete? Compete what? Zhan Yuxu also seemed to have forgotten the unhappiness earlier. His tone suddenly turned into a lascivious one. Big brother, did you still think that that woman is some goddess even until now? Since the Miao family's decline is inevitable, Miao Xiao Miao will fall into our clutches sooner or later. Then why should two brothers compete? Since it's a whore, why don't the two of us enjoy her together? Enjoy her together? Zhan Qingfeng was about to start reprimanding from hearing this sentence at first. After repeating these 3 worlds, he suddenly felt a wave of perverted ecstasy that he had never experienced, like a sort of excitement, as if he was really looking forward to it. This sort of indulgent fantasy and bizarre way of thinking had rendered him at a loss for reaction instantly. Jun Xie, seeing that he did not respond, knew that he had already silently agreed. He couldn't help but begin to discuss excitedly about how they would torture and toy with this number 1 beauty of the Misty Illusory Manor. Let's not talk about this first, our greatest enemy is still that fellow. Analyzing Mo Jun Ye is what we should do. Zhan Qingfeng said extremely hesitantly and powerlessly, as if he were hoping for a rejection, but Jun Xie stopped talking. Jun Mo Xie had already found the whereabouts of these 2 people. Hearing how these 2 people intended to humiliate Miao Xiao Miao, he couldn't help but feel an indescribable surge of anger in his heart. He was practically about to instantly kill these 2 people. But he suddenly heard them mentioning himself, so he stopped. It doesn't take much effort to get rid of them. Let's hear what they have to say about me. You had said earlier that Mo Jun Ye was odd. What is it that is odd? What is amiss? Zhan Yushu's tone was clearly relaxed as he brought this topic back. Clearly, that outburst earlier was beneficial for his soul. Although it's all lust. Mo Jun Ye, 18 years old, born in poverty. Both his parents are deceased. They say that it is because he had even some sort of heavenly treasure as a child in the mountains, which was the reason why he managed to retain his free and natural physique. His original master is an earth xian cultivator with no reputation. He was discovered by Chao Guofeng in Chrysanthemum City, and because he is a rare talent, it triggered a fight between the Saint Emperors of the Misty Illusory Manor and the 3 Holy Lands. But he was met with a mishap and went missing. Yet just when Chao Guofeng was about to return to the Misty Illusory Manor, he found Mo Jun Ye, who was severely injured, and the enemy was making use of Mo Jun Ye to lay a trap to kill the 7 Saint Emperors. Chao Guofeng and the rest fought their way out to bring this person back to the Misty Illusory Manor, and the Manor Lord saved him with the 7-colored holy fruit. What Zhan Qingfeng had said was the information records the Misty Illusory Manor had towards the free and natural physique. Yes, it was just like that. But what was amiss about it? Zhan Yushu said loudly. What is just like that? Think about it carefully. When that fellow was competing with us, be it in music, chess, literature, which part of his expression and attitude was like a country bumpkin born into poverty? Zhan Qingfeng couldn't forget about the situation back then. He had been thinking about it and finally found something. This doesn't mean anything, or maybe he had learnt it from his master. That is possible too. His master is merely an earth xian. How amazing can an earth xian get? Even if he has the greatest capabilities. Yushu, you grew up in a big family like the Zhan family. You've been interacting and learning with all these people from young. But ask yourself, how could you compare to Mo Jun Ye? Which part of you can compare with him? Zhan Qingfeng scoffed. What is so amazing about that? He has the free and natural physique. Naturally his aptitude would be higher. Zhan Yushu scowled. The free and natural physique is the legendary mythical physique. But it is just the prodigal conditions for Xian Qi cultivation. It doesn't make him omnipotent. Even the 9 Nether first young master from the historical records 10,000 years ago is not as multi-talented as Mo Jun Ye. But how old was the 9 Nether first young master back then? And Mo Jun Ye is only 18 years old. He has already gone past the boundaries of a prodigy. He is a complete all-rounder. Zhan Qingfeng said solemnly. That means to say, big brother, you are actually suspecting his identity? Zhan Yushu asked suspiciously. He. I'm not the only one suspecting this. Zhan Qingfeng said gleefully. There are definitely plenty of people in the entire Misty Illusory Manor who are suspecting the identity of this free and natural physique. I even suspect that there are many people who have already sent people out to investigate. Jun Mo Xie's heart skipped a beat when he heard of this. As expected, what I did yesterday was still too high-key. The legendary free and natural physique owner is also an all-rounder in the four arts: poetry, lyrics, and even a great gambler. It is really impossible for anyone to believe it. But the two brothers of the Zhan family had been forceful and making things difficult. If I had retreated, not even mentioning how severe it will be, it is not a match to my personality. Ultimately, it is still a trouble caused by these two bastards. Earlier, I've heard that there is a young prodigy that had appeared in Xian continent. That person is also merely 18 years of age. But he already repeatedly challenged the three holy lands and dominated the entire Xian continent. And with his strength alone, he conquered Tianfa Forest, making a place as ferocious as Tianfa Forest turn into his own personal camp, and a few days ago, hailed himself as the evil monarch, and led hundreds of saints and venerables to challenge the three holy lands. And he emerged victorious. And the scariest thing is that the entire force of the three holy lands was annihilated. A chilling gleam flashed in Zhan Qingfeng's eyes. Rumors had it that this young man is only 18, but his strength has already gone past a third-level Saint Emperor. On the spot, he killed second-level Saint Emperor Zhan Mubai of the elusive world of immortals, who had used a tabooed skill. And he did not even suffer a single scratch. Zhan Yushu couldn't help but lick his dry lips. Big brother, the person you speak of, is it that Jun Mo Xie? Yes. It is exactly Jun Mo Xie. Zhan Qingfeng laughed coldly. This sort of age, with that of battle achievement. From ancient times, he is the only person. Even the Nether first young master from the past is nowhere comparable. He really is the #1 person in the world. This sort of achievement is unprecedented. And I believe that no one else after will be able to surpass it. Zhan Yushu sighed in dismay. No matter how high his achievements are, it is because he has that sort of capabilities. Why did you mention him now? Big brother, it's not that I am being unduly humble, but both of us cannot be mentioned with this person. Although Zhan Yushu claimed himself to be a talent, but compared to this evil monarch, who was on another whole new level of perverse, he really felt that he wasn't enough to compare. He didn't even have the mood to be jealous. So he only felt dejected. So he said this sentence that he truly meant from the bottom of his heart. What you said is the truth. There is no doubt about it. But do you know that that evil monarch Jun Mo Xie, aside from having impressive Xian skills and a shocking cultivation level, is also a multi-talented person? The four arts: music, chess, literature, painting, the three religions, 9 schools, and all sorts of things. There is nothing he doesn't know and is not well versed in. Zhan Qingfeng's eyes glistened. And not long ago, in the famous chrysanthemum city of Xian continent, he had once created a song under the alias Dongfang de Shu. And it is the song that you like the most. The song of laughing proudly in the pugilistic world. So this song is composed by him? Zhan Yushu said, shaking his head in shock. And Mo Jun Ye, the first time he appeared was also in Chrysanthemum City. Zhan Qingfeng's theories in his head begin to slowly align themselves. He slowly said, Yushu, do you think that there is any similarity between this legendary prodigal youth, the evil monarch, and that nemesis of ours, the great prodigy Mo with the free and natural physique? If there is, how much is there? As the saying goes, a wise man was bound to make an error with his 1,000 considerations, but a fool will definitely get something out of his 1,000 considerations. Zhan Qingfeng was no fool, but he did gain something. In such a preposterous and imaginative guess, he had correctly guessed the real identity of young Master Jun. What? You are suspecting that he is that? Impossible. Zhan Yushu's jumped up in shock, turning pale. How is it impossible? I am suspecting his real identity. Zhan Qingfeng interrupted him and said harshly. This evil monarch is very likely to be that Mo Jun Ye, the great prodigy Mo. This, how could it be possible? These two are too different. That is a little too far-fetched. Zhan Yushu's mouth was left hanging. That evil monarch is said to have the cultivation level of a saint emperor. Or even higher. What is that Mo Jun Ye? This difference is insignificant. There are too many ways known and unknown for concealing one's true strength. As to changing your appearance, there are countless of methods. Everyone can change their appearance. They just differ in methods. Zhan Qingfeng said calmly. I've been mulling and pondering. Aside from this seemingly incomprehensible explanation, I really have no other way to explain how there can be two prodigies appearing in this world at the same period of time. A prodigy amongst prodigies. A miracle-like prodigy. Mo Jun Ye. Evil monarch. Jun Mo Xie. Zhan Yushu mumbled to himself. Suddenly his entire body began to quake. Indeed. Mo Jun Ye is Jun Mo Xie. How did I never think of this? Big brother, you try comparing these two names. Mo Jun Ye. Jun Mo Xie. Mo Jun Ye. Jun Mo Xie. Isn't Mo Jun Ye the result of Jun Mo Xie being jumbled up one? Zhan Yushu yelled excitedly. No wonder this free and natural physique is too impressive. To think that it was him. Then all those various mysteries make sense now. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1008. Ghost Ah. Jun Mo Xie 1. Mo Jun Ye. Also Evil Monarch 2. Zhan Qingfeng chuckled coldly. I don't care if whether you are the evil monarch, or also evil monarch. Since you have come into the Misty Illusory Manor, then you can forget about getting out alive. Yushu. We must retreat right now and find the elders to notify them of this matter. This matter is of great importance to both the Zhan family and the Misty Illusory Manor, so there must be no delays. Zhan Yushu excitedly responded, his voice even trembling. There was no doubt. If this matter was true, it counted as a great accomplishment. What motive did the evil monarch have in coming to the Misty Illusory Manor? Whatever it was, he must have some sort of intent. As long as this was exposed, these two brothers would definitely be elevated within the Misty Illusory Manor. And have some good come out of this setback. And they could even make use of this opportunity to get rid of Chao Guofeng and the rest. And most importantly, Miao Xiao Miao would definitely be implicated by this matter. And if something happens to Miao Xiao Miao, then it naturally would be the responsibility of the Miao family. If they continued to infer in this logical manner, then wouldn't the both of them become the greatest contributor in the Zhan family, becoming the Lord of Misty Illusory Manor? What sort of glory and honor this was! While these two brothers begin to fall into their lustful thoughts, they completely forget about the fear and were extremely gleeful. Suddenly, this unusually dark passageway suddenly turned bright. This place was the place of the 9 Nethers refining soul that was specially designed by the Zhan family for training talents. They had always banned lighting of fires. Since its establishment, there had never been a single flame or light that had appeared in this place. Of course, with the exception of the phosphorescent skeletons. But right now, there was a flame that popped out of nowhere, hovering midair, silently burning. Just a single ball of fire, but it lit the entire place completely. Jun Xie only noticed now that he had been leaning on a skeleton. He couldn't help but get a big fright. Then, all their attention was drawn to this mysterious ball of fire that appeared out of nowhere. This ball of fire just floated in the air, continuing to burn, slowly and steadily. Not only did it not extinguish, it did not descend, it just remained hovering. The two brothers of the Jun family's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. What was happening here? This peculiar sight before their eyes had gone beyond their comprehension. In this originally sinister, dark passageway full of booby traps, this one magical flame suddenly appeared. Although it lit up the entire place and allowed them to see, it instead made them feel frightened. This was the same fear that humans had towards the unknown. There were not many exceptions. And with the temperament of these two brothers of the Jun family, they were the same. At this moment, a gust of cold air blew into Jun Xie's ear from his back. Jun Xie's brain was ringing. He only felt all the hair on his body standing on end and he shrieked in shock. Then, from the void, a sound of a door opening could be heard. As if the doors of the 9 Nethers had been suddenly opened. This sound was very distinct, like it was ringing out from the deepest part of their souls. Both brothers had the same thought. A door has been opened, and some sort of terrifying monster, demon, devil, creature is able to walk out of it, but the scariest thing is, that door only exists in the void. Jun Qingfeng, who was slightly more calm, was trembling all over. A look of extreme fear in his eyes. It was remarkable that these two brothers could still remain standing when met with such a horrific sudden turn of events. Right now, both their sights were locked in the same direction, on the stone wall that was seemingly near. Another ball of flame suddenly lit up. There was no way to determine the distance between the flame and themselves. But this flame was like the sharpest needle, popping out of nowhere. Then gradually drifting closer, gradually expanding in their eyes. And on the stone wall behind it, there was a weird figure, donned in white robes. It seemed to be plucking itself out of the stone wall. From a single hand to the body. Then with a strong tug, he finally yanked his entire body out of the stone wall. And the most peculiar thing was that the stone wall did not have a single crack on it. As if this person had appeared out of thin air. Jun Qingfeng and Jun Xie turned cold watching this bizarre situation before them. Their eyes and mouths were wide open, but they could not even make a single sentence. The bizarre spectacle has yet to end. That white figure's feet did not touch on the ground. It just drifted over in slow motion. The two balls of flames in front and behind them lit up the entire passageway. But these two brothers just couldn't see the face of that ghastly white figure no matter how hard they tried. As if in this void, a ghost had just appeared from nowhere. Right now, an eerie and creepy feeling had filled the hearts of Jun Qingfeng and Jun Qingfeng. Their teeth were chattering. They had a thought that made them fearful the more they thought about it. Could it be that in this world, there are really ghosts? The white figure came closer and closer. Jun Qingfeng and Jun Xie were more and more frightened. The two of them couldn't help but lean against each other as they trembled in fear. They were hoping to get lucky and find some sort of support and encouragement from the other brother. But right now, all they could feel from each other was their shivering, which only increased their fear and terror. Who are you? To be pretending to be a ghost here? Zhan Qingfeng interrogated, pretending to be calm. His face was completely pale, his teeth chattering, his eyes wide open, and there was no blood in his face. All these were more than enough to betray him and the panic in his heart. He he he. An eerie cackle came out of the mouth of that white figure. It was still all right if he had not laughed. He only resembled a ghost. But with this inhuman cackle, it completely affirmed his identity as a ghost, practically sending the brothers Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu on the verge of fainting. As the white figure drew closer and closer, that blurry face that they could not discern finally began to clear up. Aside from another bout of eerie cackle, a handsome face appeared in the light. Sharp brows, starry-eyed, thin lips, black hair, well-built, and wearing a cold smile. It has been hard on the two of you. This youth who had suddenly appeared smiled carefreely. His black hair fluttered in the light. In a sing-song tone, he said, "How enjoyable it is to go through samsara. Who knew that the paths of life are so far? Since you have entered the lands of hell, it is difficult to return back to the human realm. Two sirs, your time is up. I have come forth specially to welcome you to be on your way." No! No no no! Zhan Yushu screamed hysterically, his snot and tears running down his face. Suddenly, his pants began to feel warm. A gush of fluid leaked out. His entire body fell onto the ground limply. He could no longer exert any strength and didn't know what he should say. He didn't even know how to beg for mercy. He only knew how to keep saying no no non-stop. And drool was already coming out from his mouth. Suddenly, he shrieked hysterically. "Ghost ah!" Zhan Qingfeng was trembling, but much calmer in comparison. He looked at this unworldly handsome face and asked, "May I ask who are you?" "This seat is the Soul Reaver. You are more unperturbed than him, and this seat admires people with guts. However," this white-robed youth smiled gently. Suddenly, his entire head went missing. Before the two brothers, only a headless body remained hovering in the air, but there was still a voice. "Admiring is one matter. Things still have to be done. The two of you brothers have committed many sins and evil. So today, your time is up. Hell has ordered me to come and arrest the both of you. To the 18 levels of hell, subjected to all sorts of torture to redeem for all the wrongdoings you have made in this life." He was just talking when his head went missing, but the head was missing yet he was still talking. Which organ was the one speaking right now? Zhan Yushu's eyes were about to pop out from staring so hard in horror. Aside from this action, he couldn't do anything else. Zhan Qingfeng's legs and stomach was cramping from the horror of this sudden change. His eyes were practically about to pop out of their sockets. His brain was ordering him to stop staring, but he just couldn't move his gaze away. He suddenly felt all the goosebumps on his body standing as his body turned cold. This white figure, when he was talking, both his legs suddenly disappeared, then his waist is also gone, only leaving two broken parts of the body, drifting and hovering in the air. And the ghastly cries begin to ring out again. How could Zhan Yushu endure such a horrific sight? He moaned as his eyes rolled to the back and he fainted. White foam was spewing out of his mouth as his body twitched uncontrollably. Zhan Qingfeng wanted to stand up again and yell, using the yang energy to chase this ghost away. But both his legs were completely jelly. He could not even stretch his leg at this point in time. Even if he did manage to get himself back up, he had no yang energy. The both of them had definitely confirmed that this unworldly handsome young man was really a ghost, and was the Soul Reaver that was here to catch both of them. They could not believe it. the sight before them was too inhuman, too terrifying. How useless, fainting just like this. The white figure let out a condescending sigh. Then, Zhan Qingfeng saw with his own eyes that two legs grew back with a whoosh. Whoosh. The waist also grew back. Then finally, the head. This fellow seemed to be really displeased, stretching out both his hands to fix his head, as if he had regrown it in a bad angle. Since it is the wrong angle, it had to be fixed. Otherwise, it didn't look pretty anymore. It seems that this ghost is also very vain. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1009. If there is a next life, do not oppose me. Zhan Qingfeng's powerful mental fortitude completely crumbled. Both his legs stretched out and his entire body convulsed. He fainted like his brother. But he was stronger than Zhan Yushu. He was unconscious. But he wasn't spitting out white foam. The feck. Fainting just like this? To think that you guys still brag about being the bad guys. I prepared so much more that has yet to be shown. Jun Mo Xie glared, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He didn't think that with his shocking entrance, even those youths in his previous life would be scared out of their wits despite having seen all sorts of horror shows. What more this society that was highly superstitious? Zhan Qingfeng gagged dryly, but he stood back up shakily. Before him, a man in white stood oppose him. Seeing that he had regained consciousness, he asked, Zhan Qingfeng, do you know your crimes? No, my crimes? Zhan Qingfeng raised his head in a daze. You have committed great crimes and reigned calamity for a long time. Do you plead guilty? The white figure demanded. May I ask, Great Reaver, what crime is it that I have offended? How did I committed great crimes? I'm maligned. Ah. Please look into the matter. Zhan Qingfeng only knew that if his lips were loose, he'd be doomed for eternity. So the only thing he could do right now was to keep denying it like his life depends on it. You have offended me. That is a crime. And it is more unforgivable than all the great crimes you've committed. Jun Mo Xie scoffed. Right now, playtime was over. That vengeance from before was more or less repaid. It was time to send them on their way. Offended you? Zhan Qingfeng blinked his eyes in confusion. What sort of abilities did I have to offend this great immortal? Great ghost? But in a blink of an eye, he suddenly realized that the person before him had already changed his appearance. It was his nemesis. That great prodigy Mo Jun Ye with the free and natural physique had appeared before him out of nowhere. Realization hit Zhan Qingfeng. And he instantly grinded his teeth. So it was you, little bastard. Indeed. It is your daddy Jun Mo Xie raised his brows. Are you very surprised? Is it unexpected? Surprise, you fecking bastard. Zhan Qingfeng cursed. He was no fool. Instantly, he understood and knew that his guess of Mo Jun Ye's identity was reality. But precisely because it had turned into reality before him, it made him feel like he had no chance of surviving. He looked at Jun Mo Xie and said resentfully, Mo Jun Ye. So you are the evil monarch. Jun Mo Xie. What are your intentions in coming to the Misty Illusory Manor? Jun Mo Xie replied leisurely. Mo, big deal. I just came here to bring a certain goddess that someone likes into my bed. That's all. Although this is truly too easy for this evil monarch, there is completely no challenge. This sentence was extremely vicious. Jun Mo Xie knew how to impact somebody to the extreme. including his body and mind. Zhan Qingfeng was most concerned about this matter. But what young Master Jun said was the truth. As arrogant as he was merely describing a fact. Zhan Qingfeng spat a mouthful of blood and laughed miserably. Did you really think you have succeeded? Evil monarch. What a great name. But with that mere little strength of yours, in the eyes of the Misty Illusory Manor, in the eyes of the Zhan family, it is worthless. You cannot afford to bear our wrath. Nodding his head, Jun Mo Xie admitted to it openly. If right now, I were to fight to the death with you guys, I admit that I indeed am not capable enough yet, but why do I have to? The wrath of the Zhan family is just a matter that I really can't be bothered about. Oh right. It seems that you still don't know about the sudden incident that happened in the Zhan family yet. And it seems that right now, our relationship is really good. Haha, the moment your identity is exposed, you can keep farting about good relationship. The Zhan family is like the sun at midday, powerful enough to become the head of the Misty Illusory Manor. And you still dare to talk big and say you are not bothered. Who did you think you are? Zhan Qingfeng laughed sinisterly. What you said makes sense. The strength of the Zhan family is indeed shocking. Jun Mo Xie sighed. However, perhaps I will have it bad in the future. But you are destined to not be able to see it. Zhan Qingfeng. Did you think that I only came here to catch up with you on old times? You are going to kill me? Zhan Qingfeng suddenly calmed down. I know I am not your match. But do you know how many people are suspicious of your identity in the Misty Illusory Manor? How many people have sent men outside to investigate? As long as your identity is exposed, how much better than me can you end up? He laughed gleefully. Right now, you are completely in a state of crisis. And your only way out is to join the Zhan family. With the strength of the Zhan Yi Xiao, we can ensure that your life is safe. And right now, you are thinking of killing me? Do you really not know how to write the word death? Jun Mo Xie was really dumbstruck this time. Does this young master Zhan Qingfeng have a brain? Did he not hear what I just said? He had never imagined this fellow to still have undying ambitions even in the face of impending death. Jun Mo Xie really didn't know whether to laugh or be impressed. As long as you are willing to surrender and join the Zhan family, I'll even let you have Miao Xiao Miao. How is that? This condition is great. Isn't it? The hopeful gleam in Zhan Qingfeng's eyes grew. At this moment, a pitiful shriek rang out from the ground. Zhan Yushu was slowly regaining consciousness. And the moment he opened his mouth he was crying. Spare me. Have mercy on me. Everything is all my big brother's idea. I had nothing to do with it. This fellow is completely frightened out of his wits. At the moment he opened his eyes, Jun Mo Xie dashed over with his weird cackle, opening his mouth and howling. Zhan Yushu had just woken up and he heard an eerie ghastly cackle. He saw a bloody mouth suddenly appear right above him. He didn't even have time to discern where he was. He only thought that he was already dead and in hell and about to be eaten by a beast. He couldn't hold back a cry of, ugh. Then his entire face turned green. His head tilted and he stopped breathing. Only a trail of green fluid came flowing out of his mouth. This fellow was so traumatized by young Master Jun's antics that his gallbladder burst and he died an unnatural death. Zhan Qingfeng was just speaking with a glib tongue, feeling that he had gotten a good hold on the tune to survival. He was about to continue speaking, only to see his blood brother being scared to death right before his eyes. In this moment, his entire mind went blank. Jun Mo Xie calmly stood up and spoke in a tone like he ruled everything. Right now, I really have no interest in dragging things out with the both of you. You are indeed stronger than Jun Xie. Because you won't be scared to death by me. But I really am not sure if you heard what I said earlier. I had said that the wrath of the Jun family is just a matter that I really can't be bothered about. This is really not some big talk. Because in actual fact, I have already incurred the greatest wrath of the Jun family. And I really am unconcerned about it. Oh right. It seems that you still do not know about what happened to the Jun family, right? Go over to the Netherworld with your questions. Jun Qingfeng could distinctly feel the killing intent coming from Jun Mo Xie. He couldn't help but have his mouth left hanging after hearing Jun Mo Xie's words. He had even forgotten about anger and grief when his own blood brother had just died. Under the piercing gaze of Jun Mo Xie, he could only feel fear. This spectacle you have created has indeed caused me to expose too much, and these could have all been avoided. So your crimes cannot be forgiven until you die. Jun Mo Xie said indifferently. Originally, whatever the Jun family did in the Misty Illusory Manor, how many unforgivable acts you've done, had nothing to do with me. But you almost spoiled my plans. That is you asking for death. Or rather to say, the reason for the decline of the Jun family is because of the two of you brothers. If there is a next life, please remember. Do not oppose me ever. Jun Mo Xie said. Then with a single wave of his hand, the veins on Jun Qingfeng's body began to pop and slowly, he revealed an incomprehensible look of terror. The same type of green fluid came leaking out from the corner of his mouth. From the surface, his cause of death was undoubtedly the same as Jun Xie's. He was scared to death. Jun Mo Xie waited silently for a while, making sure that no soul-related things would appear, ensuring that it had vanished, before silently disappearing. The waves of the soul, or rather, things like the spirit seed and holy infant were high-leveled things that would only appear after cultivating to levels beyond a saint emperor. With Jun Qingfeng and Jun Xie's mere cultivation, they were far from the rights to coagulate things like that. Their death meant the end. After a while, Jun Mo Xie finally re-emerged out of the underground world of the Jun family. No one knew what he did in there after killing Jun Qingfeng and Jun Xie. Since the moment Jun Mo Xie exited from the underground world, high up in the air, looking across from above, he could tell that the feng shui of layout of the Misty Illusory Manor already had an obvious change. The fortune of the Miao family had already changed and was already slowly recovering. And the Jun family's aura that was strong like the midday sun had already turned dull. And that detestable evil qi that young Master Jun hated already vanished without a trace. The art of feng shui is truly amazing. This place has just wrapped up and there is already such a huge change up there. Jun Mo Xie exclaimed. He only noticed that the sun was already setting, and it was not long before it turned completely dark. Oh shut. Jun Mo Xie's face changed as he instantly remembered something. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1010. Chaos in the Misty Illusory Manor. Jun Mo Xie suddenly remembered that when he parted with Miao Xiao Miao last night, young Lady Miao had said that she would look for him today to claim the musical scores for the Song of the Burial of Flowers. The elders had gathered for a meeting in the morning, and there was no way that Miao Xiao Miao would not know that. Naturally, she would not appear come over. But in the afternoon, with that lass's personality, there was no way that she would be able to stop herself. Normally, no one would barge into his room. However, Miao Xiao Miao was an exception. If this girl discovered that he was not in his room, It would truly be a huge matter. With that thought in his mind, Jun Mo Xie instantly panicked. Not daring to be slow as he used yin-yang escape, instantly disappearing and rushing towards Chao Guofeng's little yard. At the same time, the Zhan family had completely gone crazy. Whether it was the commoners or the large families, everyone could clearly sense this change. All the Zhan family experts, as long as they were above Sky Xian cultivation, rushed back regardless which part of the 7 cities they were from. Those who were nearby all disregarded expending their own Xian Qi and rushed back all the way with their greatest speed. In some places, many of the Zhan family's businesses stopped their operating because the managers had left. One had to know that this was not just a matter of 1 or 2 businesses. Nearly all of the Zhan family's businesses stopped operating at the same time. Even if they did not operate for 1 day, the damages to the Zhan family were still inestimable. However, the Zhan family apparently could not care that much. With a single move, they recalled all their strength, seemingly not bothering with their financial losses. The Zhan family had recalled all of their experts. At the same time, the Zhan family's defenses had risen to a shocking level in an extremely short time. Right now, the Zhan family could be said to be completely impenetrable. Even a mosquito could not sneak in without getting discovered. On the ground, the bodies of large piles of dead rats, snakes, and critters could be found. Everything that hid in any corner of the Zhan family was driven out and killed. Just what happened in the Zhan family? Even the rats and snakes were not let off. All the large families were frenziedly investigating what happened at the Zhan family for them to behave so crazily. But one thing was clear, no matter what the matter was, the Zhan family had definitely received a huge blow. Only when the Zhan family had been thoroughly wounded would they react in such a way. This was an indisputable truth. However, who in the entire Misty Illusory Manor was capable of that? Who could wound and deal such a painful blow to the most powerful family in the Misty Illusory Manor? Those powers that were more sensitive also began to recall and deploy their troops. Because of the Zhan family's actions, the atmosphere of the entire Misty Illusory Manor grew exceedingly heavy. Because if anything abnormal happened, a situation of the power structure in the Misty Illusory Manor being completely reshuffled was a very possible outcome. If they didn't make ample preparations early, it was possible for smaller families to end up being used as cannon fodder. Especially the Miao family, the atmosphere there was incredibly sensitive, to a point where everyone's hands were resting against the hilts of their swords at all times. In truth, everyone also knew that the Miao family's only opponent was the Zhan family. Only by getting rid of the Miao family could the Zhan family have an opportunity to rise. This was not any big secret. It's just that the two families had maintained a fine balance all this while. But today, as time slowly passed, the atmosphere in the Zhan family also became more tense. By dusk, this tense atmosphere had already reached an extreme level. Following that, a heaven-shocking howl rang out and a hair-raising force burst out of the Zhan family, surging into the sky with rage and hatred, instantly enveloping the surrounding several thousand li. A shocking super expert was actually hiding in the Zhan family. In that instant, the hearts of all the large families shivered. When the Zhan family discovered the bodies of the 2 talented juniors Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu, the both of them having died in strange manners while going through the 9 Nethers refining soul, it became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Zhan Luanhui, who was still in the midst of a critical breakthrough, immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, his qi exploding forth in a manner of one suffering from cultivation deviation, nearly losing his life on the spot. This was truly one matter after another, not leaving him any time to catch a breath. And all of it was bad news. Jean Hui, who had continuously been repressing these thoughts, finally could not control himself anymore, completely giving vent with a vicious howl. At this time, he was lying on the ground with blood flowing continuously from the sides of his mouth. The qi in his body was rampaging wildly, and there were fine blood streaks on his body from the ruptured meridians. His eyes opened wide and his teeth bared with rage. He cursed continuously. Too fecking bullying. Too fecking bullying. Motherfecker. Motherfecker. What he didn't know was that at this time, Chao Guofeng was also having a mini fit in his own courtyard. The reason being a certain Miao Xiao Miao who'd arrived immediately at noon. After withholding herself for a whole afternoon, she finally got the chance to run over to look for Mo Jun Ye. Because he had given specific instructions earlier to not let anyone into his room, the servants naturally did not dare to let her in. In addition, Miao Xiao Miao was too embarrassed to barge into a man's room, thus, she waited outside in a generous manner. However, after waiting and waiting a long time, Miao Xiao Miao finally began to grow anxious. Little Beansprout even volunteered herself, bravely barging in, only to find an empty bed. As for great prodigy Mo, he'd already disappeared without a trace. This was not a minor discovery. Little Beansprout instantly turned pale and ran out. After she found out, Miao Xiao Miao was instantly consumed with worry. As for the servants, their faces had also all turned colorless. At this exact time, Chao Guofeng and the others also happened to return with happy faces. Returning with great joy, only to meet with such a messy situation. Even the even-tempered Chao Guofeng could not help but explode with rage, scolding all the servants for being useless, not even capable of looking after one person. More than his rage, his heart was filled with greater worry. That kid couldn't have had an accident, right? Thus, only one of the 7 brothers were left behind, while the other 6 split up to search. Just as they were searching, the Zhan family's side also blew up. In that moment, Chao Guofeng became even more worried. Right now, the Zhan family was like a beast with red eyes. If Mo Jun Ye bumped into them and got killed, it wouldn't be a strange matter at all. Besides, who knew if Mo Jun Ye's disappearance had something to do with the Zhan family? From the way they were gathering their forces without caring about the consequences, there was definitely something strange going on. The more they thought, the more ugly the situation became in their heads. With Saint Emperor Chao filled with anger and Bai Chi Feng adding oil to the fire on the side, the speculation became so serious that everyone was certain that the Zhan family had captured Mo Jun Ye and was prepared to boil him alive for his flesh. The reason they'd gathered all their people was so that they could all enjoy the feast together. In his rage, Chao Guofeng instantly gathered everyone and was prepared to directly charge into the Zhan family to demand their disciple back. But at this critical moment, young Master Jun finally rushed back. If he was late by just one step, the situation would have truly turned ugly. The greatest war of the Misty Illusory Manor would certainly be ignited by his disappearance. Not mentioning the other things, if Chao Guofeng and the other Saint Emperors charged over to the Zhan family right now, they would definitely die without a doubt. That would be an exceedingly terrible scenario. Brat, where did you run off to? How come nobody knew where you went? Chao Guofeng rushed up, roaring in a loud voice. Jun Mo Xie could see that this old man had really been scared silly by his disappearance this time, even through the rage. He could see the concern in the latter's eyes. Behind Chao Guofeng, Miao Xiao Miao peered at him with a look of joy and relief. Her originally clear eyes were red and puffy, without question. This lass must have been either anxious or upset when she couldn't find him. In any case, she must have cried. I didn't go far. I wanted to sleep just now, but for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep at all. So in my boredom, I sneaked out for a walk. But as I walked, I suddenly felt rather drowsy, and ended up taking a nap by the side of the hill. Jun Mo Xie stretched lazily and said, I have to say, the feeling of sleeping under the sun is truly comfortable. If not for the sun setting, and the ants crawling all over me, I would have slept for longer. Chao Guofeng was completely speechless. The group of them had nearly all gone crazy with worry. But this fellow was actually hiding somewhere and sleeping? This was too heartless, right? But looking at that innocent and bashworthy smile, Chao Guofeng, Bai Chi Feng, and the rest were completely unable to react. Beat him? They couldn't bear to. Scold? They still couldn't bear to. What a joke. Just seeing this brat returning safely was already the greatest comfort in their hearts. All the rage, worry, and anxiousness in their hearts had already disappeared like a puff of smoke. Right now, they were only filled with joy to see him back safe and sound. How would they bear to beat or scold him? If the kid ended up hurt or had his feelings wounded, they would be even more worried. However, they can't completely not scold or beat him. Wouldn't this brat become extremely spoilt in the future? If they didn't punish him this time, the kid might become used to it, and that would not be good. Just as the group of old men were trying to make up their minds, young Master Jun hurriedly coughed and ran up, smiling at Miao Xiao Miao. You're here? This was a completely bullshit question. The other party was clearly standing in front of you, and you ask if she's here? If she's not here, then is it a ghost that's standing in front of you? However, this bullshit question had successfully broken the awkward situation. Miao Xiao Miao looked at him, and a coy look appeared in her eyes as she lowered her head meekly, and replied with a soft N. If one removed her veil, they would see that her face was completely red to her neck. How was this shy and obedient behavior comparable to the daring and straightforward young lady Miao last night? Jun Mo Xie's heart was completely lost for words. This was the same lass who almost forced herself on me last night. Why is she suddenly behaving so shyly? Isn't this too much of a change? This story will be continued to chapter 1011. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.